There were 3 ice cubes left in her glass when I slid the box next to it. She didn't notice. She was laughing too hard at something he whispered in her ear. Something filthy, probably. Her hand was still on his thigh. I didn't stay to see her open it. I'd rehearsed what I'd say if she caught me. Thought you might want this back, or didn't mean to interrupt your date. Or maybe just a nod and a smile like I was the bigger man. But no. I left the box, turned around, and walked out of that bar like a ghost that never belonged there in the first place. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't make a scene. But my hands? They were shaking so bad, I nearly dropped the keys trying to unlock my car. Do you want to know the worst part? She wasn't surprised. Not when I handed her the ring the first time, and not when I gave it back. Like she always knew it wouldn't last. Like I was just a side story she humored for a season. I sat in the parking lot across the street for 43 minutes after I left the bar. Counted. Watched people come and go. None of them her. She stayed. Even after the bartender must have delivered the box and said, "From your fiancé," she stayed. Laughed louder. Got closer to him. Took another drink. That's when something inside me snapped. Not in an explosive way. In the quiet way. The way you stop checking the weather because you already know it's going to rain. I didn't go home that night. And when I finally did, everything had changed. But not in the way you're expecting. I drove aimlessly for hours that night. Didn't check the time, didn't play music, didn't even think about where I was going. Just watched the streetlights flicker past, each one casting my face in a different shade of stupid. I kept replaying the moment I left the box, the exact angle I slid it toward her, how her laugh hit just as I turned away. It was the kind of laugh that sounded like freedom. Like she wasn't thinking of me at all. When I finally pulled into our driveway, yes, our driveway, the one I paid for, shoveled snow from, resealed last spring while she scrolled on her phone from the porch. I sat there with the engine running. The porch light was off. I don't know why that stung so much. Like even the house had given up on pretending we were still building a life. I didn't go inside. Instead, I opened the trunk, pulled out the box of winter clothes she asked me to bring down from the attic last week, and left it by the front door. No note. No message. Just the box. And then I drove to the only place I knew would be empty after midnight, the parking lot behind my old high school. I parked under the dead security light and stared at the gym windows. That's where I first learned what it felt like to be invisible. Nothing's changed, really. Back then it was the girls who never looked my way. Now it's the one who swore she'd love me forever. Funny how time teaches you the same lessons twice, just crueler the second time around. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes, my phone had 6 missed calls. All from her. No texts. Just calls. One at 2:17 a.m. Then 2:18. 2:20. 2:27. Each more desperate than the last. And then silence. I didn't call back. Instead, I scrolled through her Instagram. She'd archived most of our photos weeks ago. Probably when she started seeing him. The only picture left was from our engagement dinner. Me holding her hand like it was something precious. Her looking at the camera like she had a secret. She did. But here's the twist. Around 3:40 a.m., just as I was about to turn my phone off completely, I got a message. Not from her. From him. No name, just a message request. One line. You should come get her. I froze. The bar was closed hours ago. So where the hell was she? Why was he the one messaging me? Why wasn't she calling anymore? I stared at that screen like it might change if I blinked hard enough. It didn't. Another message came in. A location pin. Somewhere I didn't recognize. And then a photo. Her, sitting on the curb. Makeup smudged. Ring box open on the sidewalk next to her like it had exploded. She wasn't smiling anymore. I didn't reply to him. Not at first. I stared at the photo like it was a riddle, as if looking hard enough might explain how things fell apart so quietly. The timestamp was recent. Just 3 minutes before it landed in my inbox. She was still there. Wherever there was. I dropped my phone onto the passenger seat, shifted into drive, and followed the map pin like it was a breadcrumb trail to the version of her I'd lost. But I knew, deep down, there was no getting her back. That girl, the one who used to wrap herself around my arm in crowded places, like she was afraid of losing me, she didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. The location led me to a liquor store parking lot just off the highway. The kind that always smells like gasoline and broken promises. And there she was, sitting on the edge of the curb, barefoot, mascara streaked down her cheeks, holding the little velvet box open like it could answer a question she didn't want to ask out loud. He was gone. No car. No trace. Just her. She looked up when my headlights hit her, but didn't flinch. Didn't cry. She didn't even stand up. I parked. Sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt, trying to rehearse what I'd say. Why here? Why him? What did I do wrong? But all the words felt like apologies I hadn't earned yet. I stepped out. The air was sharp, even though the night was warm. Funny how betrayal chills the bones faster than winter ever could. She finally spoke as I approached. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. Her voice was quiet, almost bored, like we were discussing a scratched record, not the end of an engagement. I didn't respond, just stared at her, at the way she held the ring like it still meant something. It didn't. Not anymore. She looked down at her lap, then back up at me, and said, "He left." "Good," I muttered, before I could stop myself. "So you're both exactly who I thought you were." She winced. Just a flicker. But I saw it. "He said I talk about you too much," she added. "Said it felt like I wasn't over you." I almost laughed. Almost. But it caught in my throat and turned to something bitter. "You're engaged to me." "Were." That hit harder than I expected. I sat down on the curb beside her, not because I wanted to, but because my knees didn't trust me to stay upright. I watched a moth circle a streetlight until it burned itself out against the bulb. Maybe that was us. Drawn to the glow until it killed us. She held out the ring. "Do you want it back?" I shook my head. "No. You already gave it back the moment you let him touch you." She looked like she might cry, but nothing came. Just silence. Just the distant hum of traffic and the sound of my heart breaking in a way too quiet for the world to care. I stood up, walked to the driver's side. My hand was on the door when she finally asked the question I didn't expect. "Are you going to tell anyone?" That was it. That was the moment I knew she wasn't sorry she did it. She was just sorry she got caught. I didn't answer her question, just got in the car and shut the door a little too hard. I watched her through the windshield, still sitting there with the ring in her hand like it was a prop in a play she never rehearsed for. I knew if I drove off, she'd call a friend. Maybe Stacy, the one who always acted too surprised that we were still together. Or maybe she'd just sit there until the sun came up, pretending this wasn't a complete collapse. But I didn't drive off. I just sat there, headlights off, engine running, and for a moment, I imagined reversing time. I imagined what it would be like if I had never proposed. If I had never taken her to that overpriced restaurant with the rooftop view and shaking hands. If I had just waited. The ring was never the problem. It was the mirror it held up to us. Eventually, she stood, barefoot on concrete, dress crumpled. She walked toward the passenger door slowly, and for reasons I still don't understand, I unlocked it. She slid in, quiet, holding the ring box like it might dissolve if she breathed too hard. I could smell his cologne on her. Expensive, sharp, nothing like mine. I wanted to roll down the window just to let the air out. "I don't know why I kissed him," she said after a long silence. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "Was it supposed to happen at all?" I asked, still facing forward. She didn't answer. That told me everything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the car into gear and drive into a wall. I wanted to tell her she had ruined me. But instead, I said, "Do you love him?" That made her turn. For the first time, she really looked at me. "No," she said. "But he made me feel wanted. You made me feel guilty." I flinched. She continued, "You're always so careful. So soft. You never say what you want. You just exist around me." That stung more than the cheating. More than the lies. Because it was true. I'd tiptoed around her for years, afraid of being too much, too needy, too me. I thought being quiet was safe. That giving her space meant giving her love. But I wasn't being generous. I was being replaceable. I turned off the engine. "You said yes to the proposal. Why?" She hesitated. "Because you were safe. Not because I was the one. Not because she loved me. But because I was a backup plan in a world full of chaos. A soft place to land when the fire died out." "You don't marry safe," I said quietly. "You marry someone you're afraid to lose." She looked down. Then, suddenly, like she'd been holding it in all night, she whispered, "I didn't sleep with him." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that sentence used to mean something. Now it was just a technicality. She might as well have said, "I only burned half the house down." I stared out the windshield again. A lone car passed by, high beams slicing across her face before fading into the night. "Are you going to tell anyone?" she asked again, her voice smaller this time. I looked at her, really looked, and I realized something chilling. She wasn't asking out of shame. She was asking because she still had something to protect. Not me. Her image. She fell asleep in the passenger seat on the way back. Or pretended to. Her body curled toward the window, arms wrapped around herself like she needed protection, not from the man she betrayed, but from the consequences of being found out. I kept driving. Past our street. Past the darkened storefronts and the late-night gas stations and the red lights that took forever to change. I wasn't ready to go home. Not with her sitting beside me, still wearing that lie like perfume. Not with her acting like this was salvageable. When she finally stirred, she asked where we were going. I didn't answer. I think I wanted her to feel a little of the helplessness I'd been choking on for the past 6 hours. "You're scaring me," she said softly. That was rich. "I gave you everything." I muttered, more to myself than to her. "All of me. And you handed it off to a stranger like it was a coat you didn't want to wear anymore." She turned toward me, rubbing her temples like she was the one with the headache. "You're not being fair. You don't understand how lonely I felt." I hit the brakes. Hard. We weren't on a busy road. Just a side street near a field where kids used to play baseball in the summer. I remember taking her there once, during our first year together. She said the sound of cicadas reminded her of her childhood. I put the car in park and finally faced her. "Don't you dare use loneliness as an excuse." I was lonely too. I was laying next to someone who stopped reaching for me months ago, and I still stayed. I still believed in us. She blinked fast, like she wasn't used to this version of me. And maybe she wasn't. I'd spent so long trying not to upset her that I forgot how to speak for myself. Until now. "You think this is about a kiss?" I continued. "It's not. It's about the way you looked at me when I handed you that ring. Like you were settling. Like I was a task to complete before you turned 30. "That's not true," she whispered. But she wasn't even convincing herself. And then she said it again. "Are you going to tell anyone?" I smiled. Not because I was amused, but because I had finally figured it out. She didn't love me. She loved being loved. She loved the pictures, the story, the idea of being engaged to a man who would never raise his voice, never embarrass her in public, never make her accountable for anything. She was afraid of the people around her knowing the truth. Not because it would hurt me, but because it would ruin her narrative. So I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I'm going to tell everyone." She went pale. "I'll be honest with your mother," I added. "Who, by the way, liked me more than she liked you. I'll be honest with your coworkers. With our friends. With the barista who always assumed we were goals. They're going to know. Not because I want revenge," I paused, "but because I'm done protecting people who leave me behind." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just a long breath. And then, finally, she said something real. "You don't have to ruin me." I leaned in, close enough to smell the guilt on her skin. "You did that yourself." Then I started the car and drove her home. Not our home. Just hers now. She didn't invite me in. I didn't ask. She stepped out of the car like a guest in her own life. Cautious, slow, afraid of sudden movements. The porch light flicked on automatically, bathing her in gold. It made her look innocent, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She turned back toward me before closing the door. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Can we talk tomorrow?" I didn't answer. Just shifted into reverse and watched her shrink in the rearview mirror until she was nothing but a shadow behind the glass. When I got home, the silence hit me like a shovel to the chest. I stood in the middle of my living room and just stared. Everything felt fake. Arranged. Like we'd been playing house in a museum set. The photo on the bookshelf, the his and hers mugs, the throw pillow she insisted on buying even though we both agreed it was overpriced. I wanted to set it all on fire. Instead, I opened my laptop, and I started writing. It wasn't a Facebook post, or an Instagram caption. I wasn't ready for that. No, this was something messier. Raw. A long, unsent email to no one in particular. Just me, bleeding into the keyboard. I wrote about what it felt like to see someone you love morph into someone you fear. I wrote about the subtle ways she pulled away. How I blamed myself for months. How I thought maybe if I got in better shape, made more money, smiled more, she'd love me again. I wrote about the bar, the ring, the photo, him. By the time I finished, it was 5:12 a.m. My hands hurt. My eyes were dry, but I felt lighter. Not healed. Never that. But clear. I hit save. The next day, she called twice. I didn't answer. Then a text. Can we please talk before this gets worse? I let her wait. She called again that night. Left a voicemail, trying to sound casual. Hey, just checking in. I talked to Stacy. She might have heard something. Just want to make sure we're aligned. Aligned. That word echoed in my skull like a gunshot in a cave. She didn't want to fix anything. She wanted a version of the story we could both agree on. Something she could tell her friends, her parents, her coworkers. Something that wouldn't make her look like the villain. Too late. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. But she didn't know that. And the fear of maybe was already eating her alive. I got another message 2 hours later. Can we meet? Just for a few minutes? I think you're misunderstanding everything. That one made me laugh out loud. I reread it 5 times. Misunderstanding? I watched her touch him. I watched her leave me in real time. The only thing I misunderstood was thinking I ever mattered more than her ego. The next morning, she showed up at my door. Uninvited. Hair tied back. No makeup. Hoodie I'd once bought her for Christmas, now oversized and pitiful looking. She didn't even knock. Just stood there after ringing the bell, like she expected me to open and fold into her apology. But I didn't. I watched her through the peephole. Watched her pacing, biting her thumb, checking her phone like she was timing how long it would take before I forgave her. She stayed for 6 minutes. Then she left. I waited until her car turned the corner. Then I went back to my laptop. Opened the document. Added one more line. She's already unraveling. And I haven't said a word. By the 3rd day, she cracked. The texts went from cautious to panicked. I watched the progression like a weather report. Can we talk? Turned into please just tell me what you're planning. And then finally, you're ruining my life. That one made me pause. I stared at those 5 words on my screen and realized she still didn't get it. She thought I was out to destroy her. That this was revenge. That I was some jilted, bitter loser with nothing left but spite. But the truth? I didn't need to ruin her life. All I had to do was stop protecting it. People started noticing. Our mutuals. Her work friends. Her mother. It started small. A missed dinner she bailed on. A picture we'd both been tagged in suddenly disappearing from her feed. My name vanishing from her stories. Then came the questions. And instead of covering for her like I always had, I didn't say a thing. That silence echoed louder than any accusation. She called me again, this time from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, her voice was raw, frantic, barely holding itself together. You don't understand what you're doing, she said. People are asking questions. My boss asked if I'm okay. My mom thinks I cheated. Are you telling people that? Are you just letting them believe it? I swear I didn't sleep with him. Please don't let this define me. That last line. Please don't let this define me. She'd made choices. Now she wanted a clean ending. But she forgot something. I was there too. And I wasn't a footnote. So I wrote a letter. Not a dramatic one. Not some manifesto. Just the truth. A clear, simple message. No insults. No accusations. Just facts. I sent it to the people who mattered. The ones who were already whispering, already wondering. I told them about the bar. About the ring. About the messages from him. About the silence in our house. The way she checked out before she ever physically left. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. When people finally saw her, they looked at her differently. Not with judgment. That would have been too easy. With distance. Like they suddenly couldn't tell what was real and what was just well rehearsed. And then, finally, she snapped. She showed up at my office. Not at the house. Not a text. My actual workplace. Security buzzed me. There's a woman down here, says she's your fiancé. That word hit me like a joke someone forgot to laugh at. I went down. She was waiting by the elevators, shaking, eyes red, makeup smudged, not from tears, but from trying not to cry. Still dressed like the girl who always had it together. Still pretending she could fix this if she just said the right line. When the doors opened, she stepped forward and grabbed my arm. Why are you doing this? I didn't pull away, didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her and asked, what exactly am I doing? You're making everyone think I'm the villain. I raised an eyebrow. Did I say anything that wasn't true? She didn't answer, just stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. I didn't tell them everything, I added. I didn't mention the lie you told your boss. Or how you said I was suffocating you to justify kissing someone else. I left all that out. She blinked. Why? Because I wanted you to know what mercy looks like. And then I walked back inside. Left her standing there in the lobby, with her story falling apart in real time. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with a parade. No fireworks. No victory lap. It just settles in, quiet and slow, like fog lifting off the ground after a long, bitter night. She didn't contact me again after that day in the lobby. Not directly. I heard from mutual friends that she tried to explain things. Said we'd grown apart. That the proposal was rushed. That we had different visions for the future. All neat. All clean. All half-true. But no one really bought it. Not after the silence. Not after everything she didn't say when it counted. And me? I didn't retaliate. I didn't post anything. Didn't drag her name through the digital mud. I didn't need to. People draw their own conclusions when the puzzle pieces don't fit. Her image cracked on its own, not because I shattered it, but because I simply stepped out of the frame. I moved out 2 weeks later. Didn't take much, just my clothes, some books, and an old photo album I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I left the rest. Let her keep the condo, the couch, the Pinterest-perfect furniture we never sat on. It was her stage. Let her perform without an audience. The new place was smaller, quieter. No shared toothbrush holder. No passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. Just me, a second-hand desk, and the sound of my own thoughts, which, surprisingly, started sounding less like apologies and more like possibility. I started running in the mornings. At first, it was just to burn off the restless energy. But eventually, I started looking forward to it. That first breath of cold air. The sound of my feet hitting the pavement. It was the only time I ever truly felt in control, like I was going somewhere, even if I didn't know where yet. I picked up writing again, too. Real writing. Not desperate, midnight monologues about heartbreak, but fiction. Messy, weird, unfiltered stories about people who didn't always get what they wanted, but somehow found a way to keep going. I submitted one to a small online magazine. Didn't expect anything. Last week, they published it. And the weirdest part? I didn't even think to tell her. Because she's not the point anymore. That version of me, the one who begged in silence, who accepted crumbs and called it love, he's gone. Not in some dramatic, reborn way. Just gone. I left him behind like a shirt that never fit, but I was too embarrassed to admit didn't suit me. Now I wake up and breathe easier. I laugh more. I trust slower. But I trust myself. And the ring? It's in a drawer. Not out of sentimentality. Not as a scar. As a reminder, I almost gave my forever to someone who didn't know how to hold it. And now, finally, I'm giving it to myself.